This is a CNA podcast.
Hi, I'm Steve Lai, and I have something a little different for you on this episode of CNA Correspondent. And I say that because most stories you watch or hear about in the news are about bad things happening. But this story that I was fortunate enough to cover over several weeks started out as a mystery. And as more information came to light day by day, it started to look like it was going to turn into a tragedy. But instead, it was one of the best good news stories that I've ever covered in my time at CNA. In fact, it's one of the biggest and most dramatic news stories from Asia in recent years, which is why it's gotten the Hollywood treatment.
Takes a certain kind of mindset for the deep cave diving. You have to be a bit nuts.
They're very, very dangerous.
High water level and the low visibility.
Barely shoulder wide, pulling against very strong currents.
Last seen 9 days ago, 12 boys and their coach are trapped in the flooded caves.
Directed by Ron Howard and starring Colin Farrell, Viggo Mortensen, and Joel Edgerton, this is the biggest retelling of that dramatic cave rescue of the Wild Boars football teams to date. You may have watched some of the numerous documentaries or other film and TV versions of the story too. As 13 Lives was recently released, I thought I'd revisit the story for you with someone who lived it and breathed it in June and July of 2018. None other than CNA's Thailand correspondent, Saksith Saiyasombut. Saksith, great to have you on the pod. How are you doing?
Hello, Steve. Good to be back with you. Thanks for having me. And yeah, I'm ready to go down memory lane.
What a memory it was. We were both on air day after day after day. Me crossing to you, us having guests in studio, breaking down the story as it unfolded. Tell me about some of the memories that you have of it. There's no point having a spoiler warning in effect, is there, for this?
I think most people already know how this ended. But yeah, Steve, of all these stories that we have covered so far, I think this is among the craziest that I've covered because it was a story where the whole world was glued to the TV or to their mobile devices trying to follow every single minute, every single development of it. It had everything that a good story needs, right? Kids in danger, people coming together, drama, and then most of all, and which is also very different from most stories we cover, a happy ending.
And that happy ending was really hanging in the balance throughout the length of this story that unfolded in front of us over sort of 3 weeks. And it took 9 days before the boys were even discovered. How did you think the story was going to end?
Not many stories we cover have a happy ending, so therefore we didn't think it would turn out this way, and also this smoothly as well. In fact, many people that we've spoken to, many people that we work with, we all thought this would end in tragedy. It's no exaggeration when people say it's a miracle, because really nobody expected this.
When the information sort of came out, it was, would the boys be found? Were they even in the cave in the first place? And then how long could they survive in there without being found or rescued? And you start thinking about how much food or water did they have with them? They're not going to be able to see in the dark.
Yeah.
If they did have torches, how long would they last? And the more you thought about it, the more scary and intense it sort of got.
Yeah, and also because when you think about it, we all thought, okay, they were stuck in a cave or they were missing in the cave. No, they were actually stuck in a flooded cave. I think that was the fact that a lot of people couldn't wrap their heads around. We thought, okay, just simply walk out. And as we then saw the maps and the diagrams of the cave, for example, what we did in the augmented reality segment.
Let's look at the situation now. The task of getting the group out here, that's the entrance, will not be easy, as we heard Saksith there. So what are some of the challenges that rescuers face? Well,
we all thought, oh no, this is going to be much more difficult. There were some parts that were so small and so crammed that the rescue divers, they actually even had to take their oxygen tanks off in order to squeeze through those passages.
That sort of information that came out was absolutely remarkable. I remember seeing Glenda at the video wall with all this augmented reality in front of her, walking the audience through the different chambers, the level of the water that was in play, the length and the depth that the cave that they had gone into was, and all the complexities as well that are part of that.
The rescue divers, they later spoke that there was zero visibility. Imagine just trying to dive through. The water was as murky as chocolate water, as some of these divers has described. And then trying not to bang your head against everything, and especially in these conditions, this could have been fatal.
It certainly could. And the more you learn about it, the more insurmountable the challenges seem to be. Now, this latest retelling of this story through this movie, 13 Lives, that's just recently been released, I understand you attended the screening. What was that like? How accurate was the movie? Because we were there throughout this story and seeing it unfold. And then now to see it up on screen, you must have been going through a checklist in your head. It's like, yeah, that's true. That happened. I'm not sure about that one. Maybe they took some liberties. What do you think?
I don't know how you feel about all these based on a true story movies. I think as a journalist myself, I'm already skeptical by nature. And then having heard about this movie being made and being a Hollywood movie on top of that, I was just like, oh no, here we go. It's going to be a sanitized version of the cave rescue. So I was surprised, first of all, that Prime Video actually sent us an invitation to the press screening. I went there, watched the movie, and to my relief, it was not the sanitized version that I feared it would be. It was actually pretty good in the sense that it was pretty accurate and very factually close to reality. Of course, there are some changes here and there, but overall, I would say it was as close as reality as you can also make it entertaining. And the fact on top of that, in this specific case, this has been covered by the media almost ad nauseum. There's not much leeway where you can really change the story so much anyway. We already knew the broad strokes, right? Boy stuck in cave, found alive after 9 days, rescue divers, and all brought out of the cave and alive. So I don't think you can change the ending on that.
You can't, but the details of how it took place, that's where the drama is going to be focused on. And there's one element of the story that was kept a little bit vague as to how the boys were transported from where they were holed up in the cave and safe to actually getting out. Because as you said, some of the pathways that the divers had to go through, they would have to take off their air supply packs and push them through and then swim through themselves. And these are expert divers that have been doing this for years and years and years. How did they physically get those boys that had never done any scuba diving in their life through all these complex tunnels and out to safety?
I think this is one of the strengths of the movie, not only being factually correct, but also showing how difficult everything was. Not only showing how treacherous the conditions were, but also showing how it was all done. Information that we were actually not privy to during our coverage of the cave rescue.
Yeah, this is the bit I'm talking about. This is the crux of it, right?
The main point is that in order to get the kids out, we were told initially, are they going to take a crash course in scuba diving to get them out? No, that would be ridiculous. So what actually happened was the 12 boys and the football coach were heavily sedated and then carefully brought out of the cave. So that was something that is being shown in the movie, and it was later revealed in real life, but it wasn't told to us during the rescue itself.
Yeah, that was the big revelation, and that's the most interesting, most compelling part that I want to see from this movie.
Yeah, but also overall, what I liked about the movie was how it tried to be as authentic as possible. Don't forget, this movie was mostly shot in Australia, not in Thailand, thanks to tax rebates and whatever.
That's Hollywood. That's Hollywood.
It's Hollywood. It's always about money. But nevertheless, it was a very authentic Thai experience because the Thai cast playing the parents, they spoke in a northern dialect as is true to life. All the little details were also as close as possible. Bottles of water, they were the correct brands. The press badges were correct. The whole vibe of the media tent city in the mud where we were stuck for 2 weeks, it was pretty much bang on. And I think it also helps to really bring the experience to viewers there.
Ron Howard was quoted as saying that he wanted to pay close attention to the cultural intricacies of Northern Thailand and make it as accurate as possible. And he had one of the actresses on board help him with that.
Indeed. One of the actresses playing one of the mothers of the boys, she is actually from the north of Thailand. So she was a dialect coach to the other Thai actors helping them as well. And it also helps that you had 300 Thai extras on set as well. So even though it was shot in Australia, it kind of felt almost like in front of the cave.
We're just seeing pictures of the ambulances that are taking the boys that have been taken out of the cave today on their way.
All 13 wild boars are out.
This story, as we mentioned, has played out. People watched it live. They would have seen documentaries of it. CNA did documentaries on it, 1 year after and things like that you've been heavily involved in. How would you say this version compares? I know it's the big Hollywood movie with the big blockbuster budget for it as well and all the big names. There are actually earlier versions. There's a film in 2019. There's a Netflix series coming out soon as well. How does this one rack up?
Well, first of all, yeah, as you just mentioned, there's a plethora of different adaptations and retellings, fictional and non-fictional. As you mentioned, we had the 2019 movie The Cave, which is an independent movie by a Thai-Irish director called Tom Waller. That movie was shot in the actual Tamlong Cave partially, and had some of the rescue divers actually taking part in the movie playing themselves. So that is already pretty much authentic. Then there's the Netflix series that is going to come out in September. This one is boasting itself that it has signed an exclusive deal with the boys themselves. So that's why the series is going to focus on the ordeal of the boys in the cave itself. We don't know how this is going to pan out, but I don't want to rank all of these things. I think they all complement each other in some way or form.
All right, stay right there, Saksith, and do stay tuned to you listening, because you're going to learn what happened to the wild boars after their dramatic rescue and where they are now.
Hi, my name is Julie Yu, and I'm the host of the new season of the Climate Conversations. From chefs to scientists, join me as we get personal with the people driving change in sustainability. Look out for our episodes wherever you get your podcasts.
From playing football with Zlatan Ibrahimovic,
Coach, boss. They're gonna play with us now because we need all the help we can get.
To meeting Jose Mourinho at Manchester United.
You're here at Old Trafford today. We've got some very special visitors, the Wild Boars.
And being invited on the talk show Ellen.
Here for the first time on TV, please welcome the coach and the 12 players from the Wild Boars soccer team.
Life certainly changed for the Wild Boars boys and their coach following their dramatic rescue. You're with me, Steve Lai, and CNA's Thailand correspondent Saksith Saiyasombut. Saksith, the Wild Boars certainly got their 15 minutes of fame following their dramatic rescue, didn't they?
You have to keep in mind that these boys were stuck in a cave for over 2 weeks, and they had no idea what was going on outside. Just to give you a small anecdote, the way they picked the boys, in which order they would go out, the coach decided to pick the boys that were living the furthest away from the cave first. The thought behind it was so that these guys, when they go out of the cave, go home, tell their parents to prepare dinner. So that's how the thought process was. They didn't know that there were thousands of people outside of the cave mounting this insurmountable rescue operation and the whole world watching it. So they think that must have been pretty disorientating for the kids then to come out and to be thrust into the limelight. There was definitely, as you just mentioned, all these opportunities that they had, but also all these media duties that came along with that. It couldn't have been easy for the kids.
Certainly a very difficult one for them to navigate, and then suddenly thrust onto the global stage in so many different arenas as well, invited to all sorts of different things. As the story unfolded, though, authorities were very keen for the media to leave the families of the boys alone. There was just so much media interest and scrutiny over all elements of this story. It was really quite something. And some media outlets did a better job of leaving people alone than others, didn't they?
We were among them that did a better job than the others. And
you don't have to name names, it's okay.
But this is the crucial thing. Before the cave rescue, okay, we all understand that we have to give the parents and the families some privacy and everything. And also after the rescue, of course, when the boys were out of the cave and the families, the then military government gave us a stern warning that we all should keep them alone. And most of the journalists and media that were based in Thailand, we all followed and heeded those calls. On the other hand, there were other media outlets that didn't heed those calls. However, what was strange about all these things, though, is that the government gave us this warning, but at the same time, they granted exclusives to other broadcasters, mostly American broadcasters. So we couldn't help but feel a little bit deceived by the authorities in that regard. And I think one of the thoughts that I had, not only watching this movie, but when I heard all the news about all these adaptations and productions coming in, while at the same time they gave us a quasi-gag order. Is this our story to tell, or who actually gets to tell the story? Is it only the highest bidder? We here in Thailand, do we actually get to tell the story, or is it going to be other people?
That's a very good question you raise. Who has the rights to this story? It's a story that's had so much interest, which is why from different levels of budgets that have been thrown at telling this story, from documentaries to now a feature film, it's just a story that has gotten the attention of so many people. And these boys, as we said, thrust into the limelight, which begs the question, now that the limelight has dissipated or calmed down a bit, where are they now? Do we know that? Do we know what happened to the coach that did such a remarkable job of looking after them and keeping them mentally strong and mentally capable to deal with the drama that was involved?
I think we have to give a shout out to Coach Ake, who was an essential part of keeping these boys safe and calm. He sacrificed a lot during this rescue. For example, he was giving all the rations, all the food that they had on them to the kids themselves. So, of course, that took a toll on his health during the rescue as well, because he was the weakest almost of all of them. But to your question, where the boys are now, most of them are almost young adults. Many of them have moved away from Masai and Chiang Rai province to other places, going to universities. Most of them have become, well, normal boys as much as you can now. And Coach Ake himself, he has split off and has founded his own football team, still in Masai. So I think 4 years later, we can say that life for them has been as normal as possible. Before we get to the last question, one thing that I forgot to say is that I think one thing that stuck out from 13 Lives is that this movie doesn't put the heroes on a pedestal. It doesn't sanctify them. You are seeing these British cave divers that have a touch of train spotting of them. They are hobbyists. They are, in their own words, a little bit nuts.
Well, you have to be a cave diver.
Indeed. But what I'm saying is that these are scruffy, middle-aged, not really glamorously looking men doing their job. And that was really a clash, not only in the movie, but also in real life, seeing the institutionalized bravado, this can-do attitude of the Navy SEAL divers, who are in their own right very capable men, but not really suited for this task to dive in the caves themselves. So that is something that this clash of cultures that was really well shown. And also, it was really well shown that they put aside these animosities very quickly because everybody knew what was at stake. And I think in the end, what you just said before, the full picture is when you watch all of these things together, all the movies, all the books, all the documentaries. I think I said it on air after the rescue as well, that people say and accuse the media that we would only report about bad things or when something has gone wrong. But I would also argue that for us to report about good things, they have to be extraordinary good. And these are one of these extraordinary things that have happened. As I said, this story, after all, had a happy ending.
It certainly did. A very happy ending indeed. And a happy ending that is continuing to be told in so many different ways across so many different platforms. When a story gets told about these dramatic events of ordinary people being thrust into extraordinary circumstances, a lot of the storytelling comes through the eyes of journalists in movies as well. Reporters on the ground, you'll hear the soundbite on the news, things like that. Was there a part for us in this movie? This is what I'm asking you, really. I mean, there's the news guy, the reporter on the ground, which is you. Surely, there must have been a part, and who's playing us?
Steve, you could play yourself. I mean, I think nobody could really, capture.
No, I want the Hollywood treatment, Saksith. I want someone, like a known star to play me. Come on.
No, you already look like $1 million, so that should be fine. I mean, I think I'm more concerned about who's going to play me.
Oh.
If it's Hollywood, they're going to even change their ethnicity, or maybe. There is a running gag amongst colleagues that we all said that for this movie in particular, it should be Simu Liu from Marvel's Shang-Chi. He's right now the most famous Asian actor in Hollywood.
Yeah.
Just put some glasses on him and he looks like me.
Absolutely. Love it. Thanks so much, Saksith. It's been so great to catch up with you on this story. Loved your little nuggets and behind the scenes stories. It's been really quite fascinating. I hope you've learned a lot about this fascinating story as well. Before we go, Saksith, where can our listeners find and follow you on social media? Besides, red carpets and invites to movie screenings.
Yeah, and also as seen on TV as well. No, you can follow me on Twitter at SaksithCNA. That is where I always report all the latest, of course, on CNA TV.
That's right. And if you want to get some behind the scenes stuff, Saksith_S on Instagram. Thank you as well for listening. The TV version, CNA Correspondent, airs on CNA every Wednesday at 9:30 p.m. Singapore, Hong Kong time. You can also watch or listen to us whenever or wherever you like on CNA.Asia. Do like and subscribe to this podcast version if you're on a different app so we can take you behind the scenes and beyond the headlines with our correspondents. Our podcast team is made up of Daniel Lee, Crispina Robert, Clara Ong, and me, Steve Lai.
One thing about the cave that viewers might not remember or might not have seen is the muddy tent city where all the press were. You had press from all over the world, but at one point, and this is a typical Thai story because it's about food, you had also thousands of volunteers cooking food and really looking after everybody, and no complaints there. We were definitely well looked after. But there was one night, it was like 9 p.m. We were ready to pack up. We were ready to go back to our hotels. But suddenly you heard a motorcycle, like a very small scooter, coming from the distance, driving up to in front of the cave to our tent city. It was like, who's that? Who's still coming at this hour? And then we saw it was the pizza guy. Somebody actually ordered 25 pizzas to middle of nowhere in front of the cave.
That is incredible.
That is incredible, but also that it just adds to the bizarreness of this whole story.
Absolutely. You can just imagine 2 journalists out there. What do you want? Pizza? Yeah, go for a pizza. All right.